this video, I'm going to talk about border crossings between Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand with a motorbike. All right. So the first thing that you need to know is that we are not a border company. We're not a visa company, and the rules can change completely randomly. There's no real paperwork or way to know about it. And in the end, we're not that interested in border crossings. We do it, and we do have customers going around these countries, but it's not something we actively follow. So anything I say in this video might not be true, and it might change at any time as well. So take it with a pinch of salt. That's the big disclaimer out of the way. Another thing to know is that you can only cross borders with 150cc or below. It is not possible to do the border crossings with a motorbike if it's above 150cc. There are some tour companies that pull this off. I have no idea how they do it, but you're not going to be able to pull it off. Why 150cc max? I have absolutely no idea. It's just an unwritten rule that is a rule. First, we're going to talk about the border crossing between Vietnam and Laos. There is only one border that we know actually works, and that's the Nam Mio border. As far as we know, none of the other borders between Laos and Vietnam will let you through with a motorbike. Now, in particular, going out of Vietnam into Laos is fine, but coming from Laos back into Vietnam might be more difficult. It's not the most straightforward of borders, but it does work. When it comes to Cambodia, life is a bit more straightforward. We have the Moc Bai border, which is around 2 hours from Ho Chi Minh. And we have the Ha Tien border in the south near Phu Quoc. Both of these borders are your best bets for getting both out of Vietnam and into Vietnam with a motorbike. In fact, the borders are so good that we don't really know about any of the other Vietnam-Cambodia borders because there's just no need to try them. So with that in mind, if you're going to do border crossings with a motorbike, you're best off starting in Hanoi and going into Laos through the Nam Mio border, then going down through Laos and into Cambodia, and then coming back into Vietnam through Cambodia, probably the Moc Bai border. So how about the Lao-Cambodian border? So what you need to know here is, from our knowledge, no one has ever failed to get across this border, but it doesn't mean that it's simple. In fact, what used to happen is there was a boat service that will take your bike over the river while you do the border by foot. So it's not entirely legal, but is definitely possible. Just keep that in mind. Nothing is ever straightforward when it comes to borders. How about Thailand? Well, Thailand once upon a time, maybe more than 10 years ago, was possible. But from my knowledge, no one in recent times has gone into or out of Thailand with a motorbike. Tigit Motorbikes no longer rents bikes for border crossings, but what we do is we will sell it and buy it back. So how does this work? We have a value on our main rental bikes, the older ones that we want to sell off. So we'll sell it to you for a number. And then when you finish your journey, we'll buy it back for what we sold it to you for, minus what the rent would have been for the duration that you had the motorbike. So these are just completely random numbers, but to give you an example, if you bought a bike from us for $1,000 and the rent when you returned it would have been $400, that means that the buyback that we'll give you is going to be $600. So why don't we rent bikes anymore? Well, the simple reason is if there's ever a problem across borders, maybe you've broken down, maybe you've crashed, rental clients are very quick to dump bikes on the side of a road, and it's extremely difficult for us to do anything about it in Laos and Cambodia. Whereas someone who owns a bike, they paid for the bike, they're going to be much more proactive in dealing with it. So that's another thing to keep in mind. When we do sell a bike, we do have a warranty on it, and we are only selling bikes that we believe can do the whole journey. But as soon as you leave Vietnam, you're well out of our comfort zone. It's really, really hard for us to help you. In Laos, they don't speak Vietnamese. In Cambodia, they don't speak Vietnamese. So how about servicing these bikes? Well, any bike that we sell can still be serviced in Cambodia and Laos. It's maybe not as simple as in Vietnam because they're Vietnamese bikes, but we've never had a customer have a holiday stopping breakdown on one of our bikes in another country. In particular, Cambodia has really good mechanics. So it's a pretty good country to travel, especially on a Honda XR. Finally, I want to talk about bringing bikes into Vietnam that are not Vietnamese bikes. So if you have a Cambodian bike, a Lao-based bike, or a bike anywhere else in the world, you cannot bring it into Vietnam. only Vietnamese number plates will get back into this country. So unfortunately for you guys who are going around the world on your nice big bike and you want to do the whole world on the one bike, this makes it extremely difficult for you to get into Vietnam. The easy way around the problem, although it's not what you want to do, is you rent a bike from a company like us in Ho Chi Minh or in Hanoi, and you drive across the country and you return it in a different office, just like every other normal traveler doing Vietnam, and then you go back to your big bike afterwards. Let's talk about visas and things like that. As I've said at the beginning of the video, we are not a visa-based company and we show no interest in this topic, but we do refer everyone these days to a company called Easy Viet. And we refer a lot of people there and never had negative feedback. So if you do have those sorts of questions, then go straight to that company or basically find a company that is in the visa-based industry. It changes so fast, a motorbike rental company like us is never going to keep up with it. So finally, I'll talk about how long does it take to do border. Well, traveling Vietnam properly, Ho Chi Minh to Hanoi, is 20 to 30 days. And the north is another week to 3 weeks on top of that. It's a very long way. Laos probably is another month, and Cambodia, if you're going to do it properly, is another month on top of that. So you are looking at a 3-month long trip if you're going to be doing all of these countries. What you should not be doing is the idea of just sort of hopping into the other countries. I just want to hop into Siem Reap and see Angkor Wat. It doesn't work like that. The borders are too complicated. And actually Vietnam to Siem Reap is a 2-day drive down a highway and a two-day drive back. It's 4 days. So border hopping is not a good idea. Committing a big chunk of time to each country, that is a good idea. And we probably have about 5 clients per month doing the border crossing based holiday over 2 or 3 months. It's a normal thing to do. And if that is you who's researching something like that, lucky you. Hope this video has been helpful. When we ask when our customers come back into Vietnam on bikes, some of them have stories about how X, Y, and Z went wrong because of this and because of that. But in the end, they make it back into Vietnam. And like with all of these things, I think the stories are often very much exaggerated. Quite often, in my eyes, the customers probably made a mistake. Like, for example, when customers are returning bikes to Tigit, probably 30% of the customers leave the paperwork in their hotel and they leave the inner tubes somewhere else. Like, everyone's a complete mess. So I actually reckon that most of the time with these stories, a customer shows up at a border and they've forgotten or lost everything, and that makes their life difficult. So that then turns into a wonderful, fun story about how the border went wrong. But of course, they didn't make the mistake, the border made the mistake, right? I think if you're organized, you buy the book, you've got your paperwork in line, you know how to sneak coffee money, you're going to be grand. That's what I think.